The U.S. Senate has just passed the historic Social Security Fairness Act, which will result in millions of Americans receiving significant increase in their Social Security benefits. Who qualifies? What are the details? And what are the drawbacks? That is the subject of this video. This change to Social Security really is a big deal for many people. Now, just to give you an example, the average Social Security benefit in America, the average, is $1,976. For some people now, that is going to be increased all the way to $3,559, a very substantial increase. Others will receive a substantial increase, but it won't be quite that significant. It's going to depend on their situation. And for millions of Americans, there will be no increase at all. So what are the details and what's going on with this? It has to do with the windfall elimination provision. Now, if you know what that is, that means that you're probably affected by it and you're very well aware of what it is. If you don't really know what that is, then you're probably not, it's not going to impact you in a positive way. So the WEP, or windfall elimination provision, was designed, and it's been part of Social Security for over 40 years. And people have been fighting against it for 40 years. And they have finally, now it has been repealed. So this applies to people who have a government pension. So the idea behind the windfall elimination provision was that, we're talking about people like police officers, teachers, firefighters, postal workers, and other government workers who, as part of their compensation plan, they have a pension, a government pension. And these government pensions are typically better than Social Security. And so the idea was, well, if you're going to have a government pension, you can't also have Social Security because that would be a windfall or kind of like double dipping. But in reality, it really never was double dipping. And that's why I think it's now been repealed. Because for people who now have a government pension and Social Security, the only way that they have Social Security is if they work in the private sector. So after their government job or before their government job, whatever, they worked and qualified for Social Security benefits, which means they worked for more than 10 years in the private sector. And so in that scenario, even though they would normally have qualified for Social Security benefits, the windfall elimination provision would drastically reduce their Social Security benefits to say, well, because you already have a government pension. And so it really wasn't fair because now while they were working with the government job, they were not paying into Social Security. So kind of made sense that they wouldn't get Social Security, right? But for many of these government workers, after their government job or before, they are working in the private sector and they did pay the FICA tax, they did pay into Social Security, and they did qualify just like everyone else based on how much time they worked and how much they paid in. And so this really does make it fair and puts everyone on the same playing field as far as how you actually qualify for full Social Security benefits. So this is a big win for our teachers and our firefighters and police officers and other government workers. And it really is going to be a significant increase, not only for them, but for their spouses. So the spousal portion was referred to as the government pension offset. And it would almost eliminate a spousal benefit in that scenario. And now that's going to go away. And so now the spousal benefits will be just like everyone else's, as well as survivor benefits. So this is a very, very long fought for many people. They've been trying to get rid of this provision, and it's finally happened. Now, there is a downside to this, right? Because it comes with a cost. So this is going to cost north of $190 billion. And it impacts the Social Security trust funds. So where Social Security is currently set to fall short around 2033, this change accelerates that by about 6 months. So on one hand, we still have the problem of Social Security not being properly or fully funded. And by operation of law, if nothing changes, once we reach that point where the trust funds are depleted, around 2033, 2032, then it's about a 20% reduction that would happen across the board automatically. So if your Social Security benefit is, let's say, $1,000 a month, and there are no other changes to Social Security, it would automatically go to $800 a month. If you're receiving $2,000 a month, then of course that would drop to $1,600 a month. So that's the way things are right now. So for those of you that qualify, when will you see the increase? So this law actually is retro all the way to January 1st of 2024. It's probably going to be, I would guess, February 2025 before people start seeing the increase. But it's not just going to increase. They've got a whole year retro. So there's going to be a significant amount of additional cash going out to millions of Americans to catch them up because it is retroactive. Now, I've got some footage here I want to share from a couple of the senators as they were talking about and debating this issue. Ted Cruz is someone who had been working on this for about 5 years, and he had an alternate plan. Rather than just repealing WEP and GPO completely, he had a plan that it benefited it helped folks, but it didn't cost as much. And so he was fighting hard for that. And also Senator Joe Manchin, the two of them were fighting hard. So they didn't get it the way they wanted it. They think it could have been done better. Anyway, here's some footage of them that I think you'll find interesting.
Mr. President, I rise today on behalf of the 476,000 West Virginians who rely on Social Security benefits. A majority of our seniors in every state relies on Social Security benefits, and we know that we're in trouble. The Senate is considering the Social Security Fairness Act, which would repeal the windfall elimination provision and government pension offset from the Social Security benefit calculation, providing relief for many public employees who have been adversely impacted. Now, make no mistake, we have a problem. We all agree. The status quo is unfair, and it penalizes millions of hardworking Americans, whether it's teachers, firefighters, police officers, among others. But we also have an obligation to honor our promises to ensure that Social Security is going to be there for the people who have paid into it and have earned it, and also those generations who come after. We can fix this problem without blowing a hole in the Social Security Trust Fund. This is a $200 billion price tag. And we can fix that without having any effect on our budget. But that's just unbelievable. No one seems to really concerned about what we have and the debt we're facing. One of my first meetings here and hearings I'd gone to, and this is in early 2011, the Armed Services Committee, I asked former Admiral Mike Mullen. I says, Chairman Mullen, he's the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, what's the greatest threat facing America? And I'm thinking I'm going to hear what the military powers around the world. He never hesitated 1 second. He said, the debt of the nation will bring us down first. The debt of our nation has brought down every major society in history. And that's exactly what we're on track to do. We have a fiscal crisis in this country right now, and no one's talking about it. On either side of the aisle, we're not talking about it. In fiscal year 2013, we had a federal spending was less than $3.5 trillion. In fiscal year 2023, 10 years later, it's $6.1 trillion. That's a 75% increase. No one can withstand that. Last year, total revenues were $4.4 trillion, which left us with a deficit of $1.7 trillion, the largest deficit in the U.S. history since the pandemic. We've been spending more than we bring in every year for the last 22 years, and the debt that has resulted from it is absolutely crippling. Most Americans couldn't even last 22 paychecks, let alone 22 years of spending more than they brought in. Years of fiscal irresponsibility have brought us to the crisis we are today, which is more than $36 trillion of national debt. That breaks down to $104,000 for every man, woman, and child in this great country of ours. $104,000 liability on every human citizen in the United States of America. And it's terrifying to think that at the end of the fiscal year, we're going to spend more on paying just the interest on our debt than we do to defend our country. This is the crisis we're facing, and we're going into this blindly, and it passed overwhelmingly with cloture at 72 votes. It's unbelievable that no one's even thinking about what we can do and how we could do it better.
I thank my friend, the senator from West Virginia, who is standing here. We are standing here together with a bipartisan plea to the Senate to act in a reasonable, fiscally responsible way. Senator Manchin and I are also, in a bipartisan way, asking the Senate, don't sell seniors down the river. Look, we all know the United States Congress spends like drunken sailors, and frankly, that's not fair to the sailors, because at least they're spending their own money. But even in that context, what we saw earlier today was tragic. The vote earlier today was designed to solve a real problem. The windfall elimination provision, the WEP provision, it was enacted in an effort to ensure Social Security benefits are paid fairly, and they recognize the amount that is actually paid into Social Security. However, when the WEP was enacted, it got the formula wrong, and the result is, for thousands upon thousands of retired police officers and retired firefighters and retired teachers, they got shortchanged. A very significant number of those cops and firefighters and teachers are in my home state of Texas. I have heard from countless firefighters and cops and teachers who have raised that issue. And since 2017, I've been fighting to fix the WEP problem. In 2017, I introduced legislation to fix the inequity and to treat our retired cops and firefighters and teachers fairly. My legislation, I worked on very closely with Kevin Brady, Republican in the House, then the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee. He initially had an agreement with the Democrat ranking member on the House Ways and Means Committee to get this resolved, but unfortunately, House Democrats backed out of that agreement. And so we didn't fix the WEP in 2017. We didn't fix it in 2018. We didn't fix it in 2019 or 2020 or 2021 or 2022 or 2023. And now, just days before Christmas, we step in with this bill designed to fix the inequities for retired police officers, firefighters, and teachers. So what's the problem? The problem is this current bill simply repeals the WEP across the board, which is a massive cost to Social Security. This bill imposes a cost on the Social Security Trust Fund of $190 billion, nearly $200 billion. What else does this bill do that we just voted on? It accelerates the insolvency of Social Security by 6 months. Social Security system right now is scheduled to be insolvent within 9 years by 2033. As a result of this vote, if the same 73 senators who just voted for this provision stick with it, Social Security goes broke 6 months earlier. What does that mean? When Social Security, if Social Security goes insolvent, there is an automatic benefits cut of 20%, over 20%, that goes into effect automatically by operation of law. So what did 73 senators vote to do today? To throw Granny over the cliff? To hurt Social Security for every senior citizen in America. Now, if that was our only choice, if our only choice was treat the cops and firefighters and retired teachers fairly or do harm to Social Security and to seniors, I could understand people making that trade-off. It's an ugly trade-off, but I could understand it because we absolutely need to treat retired cops and firefighters and teachers fairly. But there is another choice. The legislation that I introduced in 2017 and have been fighting to pass ever since.
I know there's a lot of emotions around this. Some people are absolutely elated about the change. Others, it makes them more nervous than they were before. And no doubt there's challenges to be addressed and more changes to come. And so we will keep you up to date as significant things transpire that will impact you and your retirement. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, hope you'll do that. And I look forward to seeing you in the next episode of the Financial Fast Lane.